This video is brought to you in part by Squarespace. You can start your free trial today at squarespace.com/downwardthrust to get 10% off your first purchase. Today, I take you back to the past, to a place before the action RPG was fused with the turn-based battle system or the MMO-style open-world adventure. There was the JRPG, the Japanese role-playing game. Before Square turned away from it all to search out the most accessible and the most mainstream, the JRPG enjoyed countless years of glory, drawing us in with their text-based stories and pixelated or hand-drawn graphics, all compressed down to fit within the confines of a small cartridge. Chrono Trigger is often considered one of the greatest JRPGs to ever be created, a game that managed to outshine everything else that came before it. It was one of the most complex, detailed, and enjoyable games to be released for the SNES, during a time when the JRPG was nearly at its peak. Nothing is needed to be said about Chrono Trigger that hasn't already been said. It's simply a masterpiece. The golden age would continue for years to come though, and Chrono Trigger would get a sequel, even if it wasn't a true sequel. 4 years later, its follow-up, Chrono Cross, would be released onto the world, and although it's often highly debated among the RPG community, to me, it's one of the best games ever. I was 14 years old when I first played Chrono Cross, and when I finished it, I still quite didn't really understand what it was all about, but it was a magical experience for me, nonetheless. Even though I gobbled it up, I would go so far to say that I didn't enjoy many elements about Cross that I do today after I replayed it. At first, I thought the story was far too confusing and kind of difficult to grasp, but after replaying and re-examining the game, everything fell into place for me. The first thing that dazzled me about Chrono Cross was the beautifully rendered cutscenes and the pre-rendered backgrounds. Back during the heyday of the original PlayStation, the CGI cutscene was the crown jewel of any JRPG. These fabulous movie-like scenes were often provided at the start of the game, at the end of the game, and at various points of interest during the playthrough, normally during key moments of climax. The PlayStation hadn't quite gotten CGI right prior to Cross though. It was certainly getting better, but when Chrono Cross came out, it showed how far the tech had come since my first exposure to it with Final Fantasy VII. The amount of scenes are quite generous and show the world of Chrono Cross off in a way that was probably impossible inside the main game. But that doesn't take anything away from the actual game. Chrono Cross is full of amazing pre-rendered static backgrounds that combine with on-screen assets such as a gentle crash of an ocean wave, the rays of a distant sun fading through a window, birds flying below a mountain, or the steam rising from a simmering pot of food on the table. It's a colorful, amazingly detailed world to explore. Cross is a game about time, but its art style is definitely based around water. You travel to villages on the waterfront that are dotted with wooden huts. Many characters are dressed like they're ready to set sail. You get your own boat. There's coral and vibrant greens and blues everywhere, and many key elements of the story bring you back to places like this. The game is beautiful, especially when you hear the sounds, acoustic strings, and oceanic instruments of the soundtrack. The music is so memorable that it's almost worth not even noting, as both aspects of art and Cross have been praised so heavily throughout time that it feels utterly pointless to, point that out. So I'd like to focus on the most important reason why Cross is a masterpiece to me, and still very playable today, the gameplay and the story. Cross's gameplay was unlike anything I had played before. The combat is based around elements, which was new for me, and each element has both a rank and a counter. You can only equip a limited amount of these guys with each member of your party, and typically these got stronger the more you leveled up your team. White is vulnerable to black, red is weak to blue, and green is weak to yellow, vice versa. Each member also has an affinity towards one element, thus weak against its counter element, for example, Surge's strength being white magic and his weakness being black magic. So you had to kind of think about which character you wanted to recruit in your party and take along with you, as the wrong combination could spell a quick end in certain boss fights. Alongside the field effect meter in the upper left corner of the screen, as well as the different tiers of each magic, these elements came together and had to be managed appropriately to win each battle. Each element is also consumable, and once used, it's gone for the battle. So unlike a mana point system, the one-time use element system of Cross, I think makes for a more deliberate combat experience that hinges on your ability to strategize before the fight even starts, and during the battle as well. Another unique element to the combat system that I liked was the stamina bar, which goes down depending on how many attacks or elements you cast. Combined with the 1, 2, and 3 mana drains for light, medium, and heavy attacks, it adds just, again, more decision making within each battle. What's great about this system is that at the conclusion of each battle, you're healed to full, and your elements and stamina restored as well. Thus, every fight isn't about your ability to minimize damage or resort to cheap tactics to get out with enough resources to continue playing. It's about figuring out how to beat each bad dude with the tools you set yourself up with. Comparing this system to Final Fantasy IV, and you can see it's really sophisticated. Comparing this battle system to something like Final Fantasy XIII's autopilot system also just goes to show you how technical some of these classic JRPGs could actually be. It also gives some perspective on why things today seem more mainstream and accessible, proven by the enjoyable yet really simplistic nature of Final Fantasy XV as well. The good thing about Cross is that the combat system ramps up pretty quickly and requires you to make creative use of your resources during some of the game's more abrupt difficulty spikes, such as, of course, Miguel and Dario. Those guys were pretty freaking hard. I thoroughly enjoyed the countless hours I would sink into the system to see if I could find, the perfect mixture of elements and characters to bring into each encounter, especially considering there is a total of 45 characters to find and recruit. This massive party treasure hunt is one of the most compelling reasons to explore both worlds in Chrono Cross, and it's the most characters that any Square RPG has seen. The only unfortunate side effect is that a lot of them are kinda pointless to the main plot. Supplementing the amazing combat system and treasure hunt for all the characters is the fantastic story and the way you explore the world. While Trigger's concept of going back in time to save the world is timeless, Cross is about what happens after time has been manipulated. You travel through Chrono Cross on foot and boats through two different dimensions of the game, both to find new characters and advance the plot along. But if you're not paying attention, this is where stuff gets really complicated. In one world, Surge is alive, and in the other, he's dead. But without getting too technical, let's just say there's a lot of stuff going on. You've got Surge slipping into an alternate dimension, he died on the beach 10 years beforehand, the Frozen Flame, Kid in the Puzzles of Links and the Dragon Tier, then there's the Dead Sea in the Chronopolis. Somewhere Lavos fits in. Thousands of years ago, a Black Panther killed Surge when I think he was 3 years old. Link stabs Kid, but she didn't know it was Link's. Kid gets poisoned, and you gotta save her. Then there's Balthazar and Project Kid, and now she's a clone or something. Surge takes control over Link's. Surge uses a time egg to go somewhere important. Then there's the dragons floating in the air. I don't know. There's just so much to keep up with. I just know that it's awesome. But yeah, it's a lot. Part of what makes Cross so cool is that you've got to piece this stuff together while flip-flopping between the two dimensions, seeing what's changed, and just forming it all together in your own mind. Some say that's really crappy Swiss cheese style game design because the story really doesn't come together in the way it should. There's so many holes, it doesn't really make sense. But we're talking about the game in its entirety. It's a fantastic story, and it makes you question linearity in video games in an age where complex stories are often seen as accessory and not wanted. Often in Cross, there's also a moral compass that you have to bend because everything you do has a reflective consequence elsewhere due to the other dimension. It's hard to describe this game, and I know I'm not doing a really good job, but if you play this game, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I think the game itself is enjoyable by anybody, but as far as the story goes, it's definitely on the darker side and I think more akin to what an adult would enjoy. It's also one of the first JRPGs that actually has some real replay value by offering a new game plus. Now this is something that most JRPGs don't even bother to offer. You keep all your characters you found in your last playthrough, which is nice, and it frees you up to find everyone else because let's be honest, there's a lot of stuff to do in this game and you won't get it all in the first playthrough. You also get a time shifter to be able to speed up or slow down gameplay, which is a neat way of circling back on the theme of the game, which is time. At the end of the road though, I think Cross's biggest weakness is that fans always want to connect it back to Trigger, even though it's not a true sequel and does not continue the story directly. Cross tackles showing the consequences of time manipulation in a complex yet elegant way that does though get misunderstood easily, especially with die-hard Trigger fans. Its tone is dark and full of melancholy, confusion, and ambiguity. But if you give it a shot and forget everything you knew about Chrono Trigger before you start the game, it's one of the best games ever. You deal with large changes in history that have profound impacts that echo through the lives of people and places that you would not expect. Unfortunately, that does lead to a huge information dump at the end of the game, where you could tell the developers wanted to tie off as many loose ends as they could, which was one of the notable black marks on the game. But aside from that, Chrono Cross today is an absolute masterpiece still. So there it is guys, Chrono Cross, one of my favorite games ever. Now quick announcement, I've got a blog called the Downward blog that is launching today, and you could check it out by going on the description of this video and clicking on the link. It's something I've been working on for a long time, and it's going to be a place for me to share my thoughts, share some stuff about video games, maybe what I ate for dinner. I'm not sure, whatever I want to post. And you guys can check it out from time to time. I'd recommend bookmarking it because I'm going to probably post quite frequently. I made it through our sponsor today, Squarespace's platform, and they provide a really nice service for people like me who really don't know what they're doing technologically. But if you want to give it a try, it's a nice platform that allows you to make any kind of website you want, hassle-free with all the support, 24/7 and all that stuff. There's no plugins, you don't need to do anything else but just log in and make the blog or website of your dreams. So if you guys want to try it and support yours truly in the process, you go to squarespace.com/downwardthrust to get 10% off your first purchase. Thanks for watching my video on Chrono Cross today, guys. Leave me your comments below regarding some of your best games ever, and we'll see you guys in our next video.